Welcome back to Just One Question 2.0. We're in 2022 and there is no end in sight of our pandemic, but maybe one day it will become endemic and then we will all just go back to doing whatever we did before differently. Anyway, if you have to be locked down with anybody, the guest that we're about to experience now is a great person to be locked down with because Jackie Woodside is one of the more thoughtful and insightful people that I've met in the last 100 years or so. So Jackie is an author, speaker, as are most of my guests, but she's the founder for the Curriculum for Conscious Living and the Conscious Living podcast. And if I can refer to a previous work of hers without distracting anybody too much, she wrote a book called The Money Vibe, and it's got some really helpful grounding advice about your finances and how to handle money. So Jackie, welcome to Just One Question. Tell us how you're doing.
Awesome. Hi, Nick. I couldn't be better because I get to spend these next few minutes with you. So thank you, as always, for spending your time with me, featuring me on your just incredibly useful and important show. And I'm just so excited to work with you and to be a friend and colleague of yours. So, it's a great day, despite the lockdown, despite what's happening in our world, despite the politics and the climate change that's hovering over all of us. Look, this is a stressful time in our lives. And, I love this notion of conscious living because it tells us that the one thing that we have any say over is how we perceive and respond to what's happening in life. So today I choose, like every other day, I choose to be happy, but today particularly happy because I get to hang out with you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so let's jump right into that idea of conscious living. So as we said before we pushed record, I'm going to ask you what you're excited about these days. I already know the answer. It's conscious living. So tell me, why are you excited about conscious living and just what is that? What are we talking about?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I am excited that we're finally, I've been in this field for 30 years as a psychotherapist and as a professional coach, as a consultant, as a trainer. This is my space. And I remember back 30 years ago when I would say to people that I'm a coach or that I'm a consciousness trainer, people would look at me like, oh, do you mean like sports or, consciousness, like in the medical field? Like, what do you mean? So that really, no kidding. That was the early part of my experience 30 years ago. And today, I kind of like everybody in this space is talking about consciousness and knows what coaching is. And most people in our circles have had a coach or are working with a coach. So I'm excited that we're in a time that society, I won't say as a whole, but a large portion of society is beginning to value the inner journey of our beliefs and emotions and our thoughts and perceptions. People are beginning to value and understand that really, if you want the keys to the kingdom of happiness and success and fulfillment and contribution, if you value those things, focusing on your mastery of your inner world is really the keys to the kingdom of opening up life and possibility and growth and development and success and all of the things that we all want. So I'm excited that we're living in a time that people are actually valuing that. In business today, what in business they call soft skills trainers are very much in demand. And I have to say, I have a passion and a mission for changing that phrase. I want to change the language because it's nothing about being soft. That's such crap. So I say I'm an essential skills trainer.
Ah, I like it.
Because essential skills are, how do you communicate? How do you make people feel valued? How do you create a vision and enroll other people in that vision to be excited about it and want to produce at a high level? How do you create an engaged workforce and an engaged company? So anyway, I could go on, but those are some things that I'm excited about, Nick.
That's fantastic. And I can't resist one follow-up question, which is the issue of communicating virtually, of course, that we've all been grappling with over the last couple of years. On the one hand, seems to make conscious living in some ways, or conscious presence on a Zoom call like this, more difficult. At another level, in some ways, the restrictions that the virtual world brings to knowledge workers perhaps gives us time or the space to think about being conscious in a way that we haven't before. If you're in a home office for weeks on end and only communicating with people via Zoom, then you start thinking about these basic issues. How am I doing in the world, and what is my conscious awareness like, and that kind of thing. So have you found this a time that's rich for conscious living? I mean, more immediately, you were talking about the last 30 years, but more immediately in the last couple of years, have you found this a time that's been rich for that, or has there been a struggle in terms of communicating virtually?
That's a great question, Nick. I think it's both and. I really think it's both and. I think in many ways people are really having to grapple with their inner world, particularly in a world of thought and emotion. I'm sure you're aware of the statistics of, the depression, anxiety, alcoholism, suicide, overdoses, all of this going through the roof, particularly with younger people. It's a really, really difficult time. And honestly, Nick, I'm not sure that people have the capacity to turn inward without some kind of external exposure and guidance, which is why I'm so grateful for podcasts like this one and my Conscious Living podcast and all of the great courses that are out there online, and even the good parts of social media where people have that opportunity to get exposed to new thoughts, to get exposed to new questions and new ideas, so that maybe, just maybe, there'll be that reference shift from what's happening to me to what's happening within me. So I define conscious living as the ability to neutrally and accurately observe your inner world. By neutrally, I mean you observe it without judgment. It's not like, oh shit, there I go again, having that thought. Oh man, I'm really down today. I can't stand that I always do this to myself. No, it's just like, oh, there's a feeling, there's a thought. Oh, that was feeling kind of down in that moment, and just so your ability to neutrally and then accurately observe your inner world means that you actually have some sense of like, yeah, I'm being a jerk right now. I have to kind of school myself on the fact that maybe I should step back off this one. Maybe not there being the jerk. Maybe there's some jerk happening over here as well, right? So I think that skill and capacity of neutrally and accurately observing your inner world really does require some mentoring, some coaching, some guidance to shift, because our world is so externally focused. How do you create that shift? So the pandemic has helped, but in some ways, but I think it's also made it harder because people are really depressed and numbing out and drinking and drugging and Netflixing and all kinds of ways that are not conducive to conscious living.
Yes, I think that's so true. In the longer term, and you started by talking about the 30 years view, I think something slowly is happening, a shift, especially in the United States, where we've had such a culture of individualism and I call it the Marlboro man, Marlboro woman syndrome.
The Lone Ranger syndrome.
Yeah, the cowboy mentality, where you have to achieve on your own. You suffer your own pains. You ride your own horse, and everybody's on their own. To a broader sense that we humans are meant to be in connection, are meant to be in communion with other human beings.
Absolutely.
We can't make it on our own, and not in any judgmental sense of we're too weak, but just in the sense that our lives are meant to be lived in connection with people. And so for me, the whole idea of conscious living just allows that beautifully to connect with a sense of that we humans are meant to go 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 5 by 5, whatever the number happens to be. So I'm really glad that you're finding your moment and able to do this despite the pandemic and despite the challenges that brings, the sense of isolation.
Yeah. No, we are designed to be relational beings, and whether it's in the workplace or the home or in the community, having the capacity to engage meaningfully in relationships with other people is it's a blessing and a gift. But we're in some interesting times where the capacity to engage meaningfully and deeply and kindly with other human beings, taking responsibility for how I think and how I feel and not projecting that outward onto other people, these are some interesting and challenging times. So it is time for us to awaken. It is time for us to live more consciously and take responsibility for the way my life is and the way my life isn't, and not project that out into the world. And, I hope as we continue to emerge from this pandemic, that we will find this sense of kind of connection and collaboration rather than competition and separation that we've been going through these last 5 or 6 years.
Jackie Woodside, everybody. I couldn't have said it better myself if I was as evolved as she was. So thank you so much for being on Just One Question, and stay well, stay safe, and good luck with the curriculum for conscious living. God knows we need it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. It's great to be with you.